our last speaker for this session. It's Adrian Clarke, coming from Australia, from the company Textile and Composite industry in Australia. He's graduated in Melbourne for bioscience and also English literature, I saw. And he developed over the last years a system, a decortication system, how he can decorticate without retting, wet decortication. And I'm looking forward to hear what he has.
Good afternoon. I think I should start by saying, after that presentation, now for something very completely different. In Australia, it is too dry to ret. It just doesn't happen. We can't do water retting because water is too scarce. So we looked for a solution. If we were going to have a hemp industry, we had to do it without retting. So we found our solution could be used everywhere else, with minor variations on the regimen that you would use. I came into the hemp industry in 1994. It seems forever ago. But we've worked relentlessly since then, because we found that the best way to decorticate in the Australian environment was to do it without retting. No retting at all. We initially started doing it with green, fresh fibre, cut immediately from the field, but in some places that was impractical, so we strengthened our machines to do dry, but still no retting. I'm a heretic. I've been called a heretic since I first demonstrated my machine in Europe, in Italy in 1999, where people thought I was doing some sort of sleight of hand. I demonstrated it again in Britain in 2003, and John Hobson was one who saw it working. We demonstrated it again, the same technology but in slightly different iterations, because it grows up over the years. We demonstrated it again in Yorkshire in 2004 and 2005. And we built a static machine that was much, much stronger than what we had, because we actually broke the first harvesting decorticator we had by putting through bales of very, very dry hemp. It was designed for green hemp, but we broke it, so we said, okay, we will make a very much stronger one. And that was the 8th iteration, which we called the D8. And that is basically the machine. But it's the same technology that we had back in 1994, just slightly changed and made bigger and stronger and faster and more powerful. So I'd like to acknowledge that all of us are here today because we have a passion for hemp. Somebody said to me today that they were bitten by the hemp bug. Well, so was I in 1994. And it doesn't let go. And through all the trials and tribulations of the inventor in Australia, where you get virtually no government assistance, and where the American government and its bias against hemp is very, very powerful, we just kept going because of our passion. We knew we were right. In 1999, we worked with the Deakin University, and we developed a way of turning the green decorticated hemp directly into a fibre. It took about 4 hours to convert it into a fibre that could be spun on cotton systems. Fantastic breakthrough. that brought the wrath of the cotton industry down on their heads. But that's another story, which we survived. And we demonstrated that. I'm sorry Don Wirtschaft is not here because he came out to Australia to see it. So we're here because we have this passion. And I see so many different ways that so many people throughout Europe have worked relentlessly to keep the hemp dream alive. La Roche has taken one path which we could not possibly do in Australia because we can't do it. But I can see some technology that they've got that would be very useful to our line. From our observations back in Australia, we see the hemp industry actually stagnating, and we see a lot of people, academics all over the place, looking to find new ways of using hemp. But the material that you have to work with, once it's been retted and hammer milled, and I'm delighted to see La Roche has gone away from the hammer mill method, it's not very good. It can't be used in textiles. It's been weakened because of retting and because of the processes, the hammer milling, and it's the applications for it become limited. Also, if you're a farmer and you want to grow it and you're remote from a mill, why bother? Just why bother? And I've spoken to, in the last 6 months, I've spoken to probably 200 people in Eastern Europe that would all love to go back to their traditional hemp industry, but they can't. They have no processing left, except the wonderful traditional long line method, which I know quite well. So we hope that with our technology, working alongside the established industry, we can give new life to the whole industry in places where it can't be, it's just not practical at the moment. But with our machine, we hope to make it practical, not just to grow hemp, but to process it on the farm, and thus enable the opportunity for the development of new regional and local businesses. So our idea was proven 14 years ago when I think we used the D3, I think of the iterations, they're all like friends to me, the D1, the D2, the D3, the D4, the D5 were not very successful. The D6 was brilliant for long line processing. The D7 was the one that we took to Britain in 2003. And the D8, we first built a D8 in Britain. We've built several of them since. And that is the one that is our current model. And I'm sure we'll find ways of improving it, but I don't know what they are today. We're a really new idea. As you can see, everybody talks about retting. There have been very scholarly studies and papers done about retting and what influences the power of retting and the timing of retting and whether it's going to rain or whether it's going to rain too much. We just ignore all of that. It doesn't mean a thing. So we believe now is the time for the acceptance of our new idea, alongside the existing industry in the more remote areas. But we need to justify this passion that we've all kept for all this time. I need to justify mine. I think that passion would have cooled a bit if you were a hemp grower in some remote region and you've grown a beautiful crop and you can't do anything with it. It has no value until it is decorticated. And by the time you've shipped it to some central place, you've roll baled it, you've retted it, transport costs, everything is completely, well, to my mind, the fibre is damaged and there's no profit left in it. Eastern farmers have told me that because of the lack of our machine in their regions or on their farms, that the hemp industry has become a closed shop. And they lament that, and I'm saying, well, it doesn't need to be. We can open it up, and we can make the dream of hemp, very strong hemp composites. Our fibre rivals the strength of fiberglass, and in some cases can rival the strength of carbon fibre, and we've had universities prove that. Our fibre can be made into textiles. That would mean that in Europe, anywhere, a textile industry can flourish around wherever it's grown. And I'm sure everybody who's into sustainable thinking would appreciate the idea of being able to grow something, give it its initial value add, make it valuable where it's grown, and then be able to turn it into a product locally that you can then export to other areas. That's part of my passion, is to prevent the transport of valueless goods. At least let's value them up in the area where they were grown, where they were made, and then export them. In Australia, when we first had our breakthrough, we had several cotton mills. They very quickly closed down. The one that we were in partnership with, Rockley, was foreclosed on by its financier because it was processing hemp. So that's the sort of danger that can happen in a satellite country to the US. Now it's all shifted to China, and the Chinese are very keen to have our fibre. We had a Chinese delegation there in Australia visiting us 2 weeks ago, expressing their great desire to have our machine, and in lieu of that, at least having our fibre. They're talking about us growing 100,000 to 200,000 hectares within the next 5 years. And we all think of seed. That's what I thought too. So we're looking for all sorts of new ways to utilise this super strong, super high quality fibre. It's a virgin fibre. Nothing's been done to it except it's been taken away from the stick that holds it and keeps its value. I think the other aspect in Australia is that no farmer would allow wetting because we don't have subsidies. They have to move one crop off and plant another one straight away. And I think that may become the world model as the intensified agriculture really hits home in Europe. The main challenge to the hemp industry is that hemp needs to be decorticated. And the herd must be removed without damaging the fibre, and we have set out to perfect that. Fibre must be in the best condition for whatever it's going to be used for, and I see retted fibre as already degraded. I'm a heretic, Now, if the decortication is done on the farm during harvesting, is that a revolution or is that heresy? Take a standing stick of hemp, put it through the decorticator, put it through our subsequent steps, and you could be, in the afternoon of that day, 4 hours later, spinning it and weaving it. Or you could be putting it into high strength composite product, like a car body, like Henry Ford did. We see this as a breakthrough to modernise and liberate the industry so that it can expand and take its place. This is the decorticator. This is the D8. It's small, about the size of a large refrigerator. It has 3 moving parts. It needs no retting. It does not degrade the fibre. It's a tool which can give the hemp industry new life and a multitude of new directions. With this machine, there is no need for a farmer to bale his crop and to send it away. So we obsolete baling. There's no reason to bale. With this machine, the farmer can harvest and decorticate the hemp and make it into hurd and a valuable unretted and undamaged fibre right on his farm. This little machine is the latest version of our decorticator. It's called the D8, because as I said before, it's the 8th iteration of working systems. The little one that we used to decorticate Phil Warner's crops back in, was it 1996 or 1995, so that we could measure as he was developing tropical versions of hemp, or at least Queensland versions of hemp varieties, we were the ones that decorticated his hemp to find out what the ratio of skin to herd was. Couldn't reliably do that if it was retted. This machine will do it at very high speed if it is green. It's a bit slower when it's dry. It takes up to 10 times the power to do dry hemp. But when it's green, it's like butter. We've had this version since we built it in 2005. We're building it in late 2004. We had it running in 2005 in Yorkshire. This is what we call the static version. It's mounted on a stand, and the stand is in a trailer, and it can be taken to the field and run in the field and hand-fed. It's ideal for small trial crops, particularly researchers or people who just want to get their feet wet and get into the industry. And one of the big problems, as we've all experienced, is if you've made it, can you sell it? Well, you've got to have some in your hands to go and sell it. If you've got up to 10 hectares, you can use that machine. It'll make, if you've got 10 hectares of good crop, now in Australia we think of it as 10 tonnes of stem when measured dry. Obviously when it's green it's probably 2.5 or 3 times that. But we see this machine as providing a beginner, somebody who's trying to develop a market, the opportunity to create themselves some product and go out and find a market. And as you cut the field and feed it in, you just move it up to the face of the field. So, you take the stem from having no value to having value on the farm, and our averaged experience of good crop is 7 tonnes of herd and 3 tonnes of fibre per hectare. So that possibility is realised with this machine. And it gives you the chance to develop local market and even local industry. We're all looking for local industry, particularly in the country. Fibre can be used to replace fiberglass, but can be further processed to make textiles and paper. The herd can be sold to the local builder to make concrete houses, which we all know about. That's done right on the farm. And even small crop can be put through to make some cash crop for the farmer. What is the value of the fibre at the farm gate? Well, in Australia it's higher than here. Then we don't have farm subsidies, so it has to be. What is the value of the fibre? It's a different fibre than you're used to seeing. It's a very different fibre. Whatever that value is, it's far more than the zero that it was standing there undecorticated. Virgin undamaged fibre that this machine creates provides a starting point for local industry to develop around it and around the town. If the fibre were sold to a GI Textiles company for, let's call it €1,000, because it is superior, a local weaving group might buy it to make traditional goods. I've had that said to me now by a number of people from Lithuania, Estonia and Latvia, where they had a tradition of doing it. In Lithuanian house in Melbourne, there are tapestries there that were made and brought out by refugees that now live in Melbourne, have their families there. These tapestries are all made of hemp. Traditional craft. So what of the herd? Now the herd in Australia is selling variously between about $380 to I've heard of some racehorse owners paying $3,000 a tonne for it, importing it in from Holland. So let's just say it's €300 a tonne. For a small crop of 10 hectares, that's $30,000 worth of fibre and $21,000 worth of herd. That can be processed with that machine. Now, even that might need a group, a co-op of several farmers to get together to do. That's fine, more hands. Feeding the machine is good. Then you're moving on to the next farm. Just tow it, it's on a trailer. So they have made something of value before it leaves the farm. That's a decorticated hank of hemp that was done in New Zealand about 2 months ago. We had the chairman of the New Zealand Wool Board come and look at that, and he is now agitating the New Zealand government to work with us to revivify their whole textile industry in New Zealand around hemp and wool blends. He understood precisely what he'd seen. We had him feed the machine, and he's now being bitten by the hemp bug too. Our Chinese buyers declared it the best hemp fibre they had ever seen for both textiles and composites, and we've signed preliminary agreements with them. The local Waikato University, they brought their team of PhD students to the site, where they too operated a machine and took away vast amounts of material for all their testing and product development. They're looking for anybody who wants to partner them I can give you their details. We had a local New Zealand composite industry man who makes wool insulation mats. He came and took a lot away and made some with him. And they both declared that this could be the basis of a whole new range of industries throughout New Zealand. And already there are a standing order now for 20 tonnes of hurd a week. That's hurd for a composite product. The fibre is going into different areas as well as textiles. So what's true for New Zealand will certainly be true for regions throughout Europe. This is part of our system. It's a fancy cutter. It cuts the top, it cuts the bottom, and it takes the, if we're doing a purely fibre crop, it takes the leaves away and windrows them, takes the stems and windrows them. And then we can immediately follow with the next machine. But you can take the leaves and feed them to animals. We just don't want too many leaves going through the decorticator because it clogs it. If it's a dual crop, you can windrow the seeds. Now, if we haven't got too much bird action around, we can leave the seeds there to dry so we don't have to dry them later in Australia. But in Europe, obviously, you can't do that. You'd pick it up immediately with a combine with a, say, a canola front and thresh the seeds. But you've got two windrows next to each other, alternating across the field. And the stems are then handed over to the magic of the HD3, the harvesting decorticator number 3. It's number 3 because number 1 we took to England in 2004 and we demonstrated that. That was a 10-tonne machine. It was over-engineered, did the job beautifully, but it was a very expensive machine. The HD2 was where we took the advice of AGCO in Britain. Their senior engineers came out and said the solution is you stick it on the front of a combine harvester, a straw walker combine harvester. So we did that. That worked really well. But again, it was a very costly solution because you had to have one of their combine harvesters. Worked very well. You can see these images of these on my website, by the way. So now we have the HD3. That's our proof of concept machine. We spent so much money on the other ones, we decided to economise. And we also had this question about, are the components reliable? Can they be reliable? Okay, it's got a pickup that's probably done 3,000 hectares on the front of it. It's got a rattle chain out of an old combine harvester. It's probably done 3,000 hectares. And we've got potato cleaning grids as rotating underneath. Lord knows how many potatoes they've done, but they're very reliable, absolutely proven. So we used what we had. The pickup will pick up the straw, take it up to the D8. The D8 will create the fibre which comes out toward the front. And there's a conveyor that takes it down. Now this is in Australia we didn't have to worry about dropping it on the ground. So we dropped on the ground and we came by later with a baler and took it away. The herd was scraped up and put in that bin. Now I'm getting the hurry up sign, so I'll hurry up. This is the new design that we're building at the moment. Instead of having a bin, we have a conveyor that takes the herd into a chaser. We have the green fibre going into a squeezer, which squeezes out about half the gum. We could make it squeeze out more, but we don't want to damage the gum. So squeeze out half, and that's about the equivalent of most breeding, believe it or not. And then that can go straight off to a dryer. But that's the system. That's the new system that we are offering for sale. You can have a static D8 to start off with, but if you've got larger crops, that's the machine we're offering. So, have I time for a few questions?
Sure, thank you, Adrian. Question on this magic machines? Michael?
Yeah, I have a very few comments. Nova Institute is analyzing those equipment to show since 15 years. And of course, it's not enough to give a feedback in this conference now at the moment, but I have only two comments. The one is when you talk about unretted hemp, it says unretted hemp, you have to know that with the European equipment, this is already possible. It's not really a problem. So for example, it's about the line for John Hobson in hemp technology or also others, they can process unretted hemp. So that is not really new. The problem is, what we found out, that the customers don't like unretted hemp.
Yeah.
So the quality of the fibre is not what the non-wood producers really want to have. So even if the line can do it, in reality they don't do it because the customer don't like it. That's the first question or comment. The second is this field decortication. All systems by now failed because of two reasons. The one reason is it's not easy to collect the shifts. If you have a field from 100 hectare and you have a field decortication and you need the shifts for your profit, it's not so easy to collect them. That's the first point. The other point is, if you have a good decortication machine running only in the harvesting time, compared to a fixed system running 12 months, normally the economy is not really working. Do we have an answer on this comment?
We catch all the ship. It goes into onto a conveyor, which takes it into a chaser truck. So it's collected. All of it's covered. You're just constantly taking it. This machine operates at about a hectare an hour, so it's doing in dry heat terms 10 tonnes an hour. But we're doing it green, so it's got a lot of water in it, and we squeeze the water out. And that comes out with the water. So your first point is what the customer wants. Well, I think that's really an education thing. If they're offered a superior fibre, surely they'd recognise a superior fibre and be interested in it. If they've only ever had retted fibre, they've never had the opportunity to have anything else, that becomes what they want. That becomes what they're used to. That becomes what they're tooled up for. But new industries might not be tooled up for that. They could be tooled up for something better.
Other questions?
It's the same D8. In fact, if you buy a static decorticator and you want to upgrade it later, we just lift it out of that and put it in the travelling frame. So it has a capacity. It's just that nobody's ever been able to feed it at the capacity that a mechanical feeder can do it. We had 2 of them running in China, and I had a team of 50 people putting in hemp as fast as they could, and they still weren't reaching the capacity of the machine, even though it was dry material they were putting in it in that time. So we say, well, maybe you can do a tonne of straw an hour if you've got fit people doing it. So that's its capacity, but that's the capacity of the people who can feed it. It's only when you mechanise the feed that you actually get it up to its capacity.
Yeah, I've a small question. I just read here your newspaper, with of course a lot of negative things about the European hemp industry, but that's okay. You tell here that it's only 15% fibre recovery rate. In your newspaper, if you wrote, standing here, that the European industry, the European systems, have only a fibre recovery rate of 15%.
That's based on studies we did of, we're talking textiles there, we're talking about long line spinning systems. That was their recovery rate into what could be put into a textile. And I got that figure from the Irish long line spinning specialists, particularly Jim Manley out of North Ireland, and I got it from the Hungarian ones, and I got it from the Romanian ones. I got it from Don Burcho.
Then
I said.
Then I have a little bit of feeling that you're not doing the comparison very right. Because now your comparison, your complete fibre recovery rate you are getting from the field, so you will be, with including the chives still left in the fibre, around 30% I estimate, and fibre content of the straw. But if you calculate you want really to clean the hemp fibre as clean for spinning purposes, and you also should calculate in the short fibre recovery we got from the, we do not throw it away. A part of the fibre will go to textiles, a part of the fibre will go for insulation.
So now you're comparing your system. Textile. What goes into the fine linen textile is about 15% of what was grown in the field. Yes, they recover the fibre and they put it into lesser products, but that was...
I'm delivering at the moment for English spinning company fibres, 25% recovery rate, at least. But for me, it's very difficult to believe that you can send this kind of fibres, you're staying in this picture, to a spinning company.
No, we don't send that sort to a spinning company. We degum it first in a Kia degummer. And this is all seen on my website. If you want to look at the website, we developed this system in 1999 at Deakin University, where we put it in a Kia degummer with a range of chemicals that we devised, and it takes about 3 or 4 hours. Pull it out, you dunk and squeeze it like you would warm in a scour, then you dry it, then you open it, and then it goes straight into cotton spinning.
So you apply a chemical process after decortication?
Yep.
Thank you very much. No questions anymore.
Are there more questions? Yes.
I should answer that a bit fuller. We did have an enzyme method, but our investor at the time wanted us to make an industrial method, so we used chemicals. The enzyme method was very, very successful. It just took a couple of days.
I would like to ask how perform the machine when you use do you issues or issues variety? Do you have some difference?
No, there's no difference at all. Our machine doesn't care. As long as it goes in straight, that's all it cares about.
Okay, last question for the session. No more questions. Thank you very much. Now we have our coffee break, and